Hi, I'm Bob Trask. Today, I want to talk about genius. Today, want to talk about whether or not it's possible for you and me to become geniuses. But what does genius mean? Like Leonardo da Vinci was definitely a genius, and Steve Jobs was definitely a genius, and Van Gogh was definitely a genius, and Beethoven was definitely a genius. But could Beethoven have built a car? As Henry Ford did? Could Beethoven have created um, a great recipe for beef stroganoff or for a chocolate cake? Or could Van Gogh have sailed across the world as Magellan did? So if I was to become a genius, if you were to become a genius, what would that mean? What would that be like? And then the other part of it is, why would we want to? What would be the advantage of being a genius? I mean, life's going pretty well just as it is. So if you could become a genius, then what would that mean? But what if the greatest geniuses in the world aren't out there somewhere, but inside of us, patiently waiting to be awakened? Imagine the spark that ignited Edison's inventions, the fire that fueled Maya Angelou's words, or the driving vision of Malala's courage. Malala, the girl in Pakistan who got shot in the head because she led a girls' march and said women decide to get their education and nobody should stand in the way of that. So Um, incidentally, after she got shot in the head and she got back out of the hospital and came back, she went right back to her work. Why? Because she had to, because she's a genius. Awakening the genius within begins with this simple question. Are you ready to see yourself as limitless in the area of your choice? Limitless. Every day, countless talents remain hidden under layers of doubt, layers of fear, or even layers of routine. Just, I got to get this done and this done and this done, and I don't have time to think. I don't have time to imagine, to contemplate. I'm busy, busy, busy. Take J.K. Rowling, who faced rejection after rejection after rejection before somebody finally saw that Harry Potter could become worthwhile, and then it became a global phenomenon. Leonardo da Vinci's curious, restless curiosity led him to invent things and imagine things that were way beyond his time. I mean, he designed a helicopter, for crying out loud, in the 1500s. Their secret wasn't talent, it was the belief in the power that's inside them. So I looked at it. I mean, do I believe in the power that's inside of me, the brilliance that's inside of me? Do you? Do you look at the brilliance that's inside of you and let it awaken? A lot of us, a lot of us say, "Well, I want to be a genius, so I'm learning to play the guitar." Well, maybe that guitar isn't your thing, or maybe teaching isn't your thing. Part of being a genius is to recognize who you are, why you came here, what you have to offer. Reflect for a minute. When was the last time you truly trusted your intuition? Let your intuition guide you. Your intellect said, well, this or this is correct, but your intuition said, I don't think so. When you went to the closet to pick out a blouse or a shirt or a dress, and and you said, "Oh, this will work today." What was your intuition saying? No, this is the one, but you overrid that. When did you last explore an idea for the sheer joy of discovery? When did you last explore an idea just for the sheer joy of discovery? Because I got to tell you, there's a lot of joy in being a genius. A lot of joy because it's constant accomplishments of things that are beyond what people think are possible. Genius is not then reserved for prodigies or for billionaires. Genius thrives in persistence, in creativity, and the courage to be different. The courage to be different, because none of the geniuses that I've talked about so far were like any other geniuses. And each one of them had the courage to be different. The Beatles came out and changed the world. They changed the way people thought. The Beatles, four long-haired kids from England, but together they formed something that was genius. Lao Tzu said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Buckminster Fuller and a lot of other leading thinkers all say that every child is a genius until he or she is 6 years old. And what happens at 6? Well, at 6, they get introduced into the great human belief system. And all of those wild corners that they had, I mean, they were like snowflakes. They had all of these different parts sticking out, but that didn't fit with society. So we put them in school and we begin to whittle away at those parts that didn't fit. And it wasn't a snowflake anymore. But it's never too late for you or me to have the childhood that is completely free and open and joyous and genius. Never too late, never too late. What was wrong with the minds and the imaginations we were born with? Was there something wrong with those? Something wrong that they had to be fixed? Like you see that deer in the meadow, that that doe comes out and stands for a few minutes, looks around, and then her fawns trot out behind her. And now those fawns, what are they going to have to get in school and sort of learn how to step up? Or will they just be fawns? And their natural instincts and their natural proclivities will just guide them through life. Why are we so different? Why do we have to use our intellects over our intuition? Among other things that happen to kids is their naivete is diminished. And they're being taught that imagination is foolish. There's an old, I don't know whether it was the name of a poem or the name of a book, "The geranium on the windowsill died, and teacher, you just went on." Those kids are molded in those adolescent years into little models of what the adults approve of, little models of what the adults are. Why is it so wrong to just let them go? Just let them grow. They will have learned that in order to survive in our society, they have to stop thinking as individuals and learn society's rules. They let their 100-mile wide 5-year-old minds be whittled down until it fits society's mold. Okay, All right, now we're adults, and every one of us feels that something in our life is missing. Boy, I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people in talks and seminars around the world, and I can tell you that I know that in almost every single person, and maybe every person, they feel like there's something missing. And they've coded it over. It's called denial. They've just coded it over. They've just said, no, that doesn't exist, until finally they don't feel it anymore. They don't notice it anymore. But everybody knows there's something missing. And most of us have surrendered to that missingness. But the greatest philosophers of all time told us that the void inside of us needed to be filled so that we could live the lives we came here to live. Plato said the common sense was pregnant with errors and superstition. He argued that mainstream thought and popularity held opinions lead people toward the wrong values. Mainstream thought and popularly held opinions lead people toward the wrong values. Both Aristotle and Epicurus agreed that we should be critically examining our lives if we want to enjoy life more fully. Enjoy life more fully. What the heck does that mean? It means that every day when we wake up, we say, yes, here's another day. And every night when we go to sleep, we have a big smile on our face for having lived that day fully, with all of our burners turned on. Not just cooking on the front left burner, all the burners. Yet most people live incomplete lives, don't they? And they'll go to their graves unfulfilled. They live thinking that happiness is the same as joy, but happiness is not the same as joy. It's not the same at all. Joy is a state of being. Joy is living my life fully. Joy is letting all of the genius and all of the imagination within me flow forward and take voice. What would Van Gogh's incredible work be if he had let himself be molded? What would Beethoven's have been? Or Tchaikovsky or Schubert? Eckhart Tolle said, true creativity flows only from stillness. When stillness becomes conscious, the spiritual dimension enters your life and you begin to be guided by an intelligence far greater than the human mind. What's he talking about? He's talking about the stillness that stops that mind chatter, that intellectual gobbledygook that just keeps us constantly rattling around inside of our heads saying, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Instead, who shall I be? Who shall I be? So how do we get around this obstruction to living full and satisfying lives? Well, we have to stop fighting it and become free thinkers. And stop sacrificing the wisdom of our unique genius hearts in order to fit in. Our genius hearts. Let's start by realizing that intellectual knowing is never the first step in leading a full life. Intellectual knowing is never the first step. It's the last step. We're supposed to realize things. We're supposed to be bringing from inside of us this wealth of joy and imagination and exuberance and pleasure and 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 the great appreciation for life as it is, for nature around us, and being able to bring that forward and let it sing its song, let it dance its dance inside of us. And then our intellect can take over and guide it into appropriate ways. But the intellect's the last step. So how do the jobs of our intellect and our imaginations differ? Our imaginations invite us to the party. Our intellect tells us how to get there. Those first steps toward genius always, always come from your heart. And that portion of your brain called the limbic system, the heart and the limbic system, passion, feeling, creativity, art, communication. The intellect is amazing and perfect. It's our own individual supercomputer, isn't it? But the intellect doesn't feel. And feeling's what we seek. That's why we go to movies. That's why we read books. That's why we meet with our friends. Because it gives us a feeling. It's what makes life worthwhile. And that comes from our hearts, doesn't come from our brains. And what we want to know is the truth, the real truth. But again, the intellect's in the way. It tells us truth is a collection of facts. It's not facts. Intellect, it's not facts. It's a river of light flowing through us. And if it flows through all of us, then it always, nature is flowing through us too, because we're creatures of nature. And that light that creates a tree, that creates a mountain, that creates an eagle, that creates the seas, that incredible powerful consciousness is flowing through you and me. And it's not asking questions. It's not trying to get an intellectual observation or calculation. It's actually just saying, just be, just be, just be. And that truth is constantly evolving. Truth evolving. Imagine that. It isn't a fixed thing. Truth evolving into newer and more beautiful forms. So we have to stop thinking we know anything and become constantly curious about what's becoming. Not what is, not what was, but what's becoming. Let's stop being ponds of opinion and become rivers of discovery. Yes, indeed, our need to have order has its place and is good in many ways, but relative to our inherent genius, it's a trap. In January 1975, a German in Cologne, Germany, a teenage girl named Vera Brandes had gone beyond her years and arranged to have the famous American jazz pianist Keith Jarrett play at an evening concert at the Cologne Opera House. Imagine that. Teenage girl arranged that. There'd already been 1,400 tickets sold. And Vera was understandably concerned that it had all come together. I mean, she was a kid and she'd put this all together. So in the afternoon, she went over to the opera's house and to make sure that everything was going to be okay. And Keith Jarrett showed up to check out the piano. And he requested a certain piano. He requested a full concert grand piano. And he's there he is on stage, and there's this little parlor piano, little dinky parlor piano. And he played a few notes and then he stood up and walked away, refusing to play. The piano was out of tune. The black notes stuck. The bass notes were muffled, and the high notes were squeaky and plinky. This piano was half the size he'd asked for, and the volume of the small piano would never reach the balconies. Keith Jarrett said that unless that piano was replaced with the full grand, he was not going to play that night. He went out to wait in the car, wait for his driver. And Vera, this teenage girl, ran to catch up with him there. And then she pled with him through the car window. She told him her life would be ruined if he didn't play. She begged him. You know what? He finally consented. But he said, never forget, only for you. Only for you. What a generous man. What a beautiful thing for him to do. So he played. He played that night. And after the concert, Vera Brandes said, what's important to understand here is that the proportion between the instrument and the magnitude of the hall, that tiny piano in that large hall was an almost impossible combination. And yet he played. And as he played that night, Keith Jarrett was standing, was sitting down, was moaning, was writhing, was pummeling the unplayer piano fiercely and playing as he had never played before. He avoided the plinky high keys and the muffled bass keys and played almost entirely in the middle register. And the result? The result was one of the greatest jazz piano albums ever recorded. The album entitled Coln Concert, and in case you're interested in finding it, it's C-O-L-N Concert, has sold 3.5 million copies. No other solo jazz album or solo piano album has ever even come close. What Keith Jarrett did was in partnership with what Vera Brandes did. Both of them stepped beyond what could normally be expected of them and produced a miracle. And my dear friend, please hear that. That's the only way miracles are produced. Interested in creating a miracle? You got to step outside your comfort zone. You got to do the impossible. You got to dare the impossible. That's how we become miracle workers. It's how we unfold our natural genius. By being willing to not be ordered, to be willing to just go out of order and just jump in and do whatever you feel like doing. In his fine book, Messy, The Power of Disorder to Transform Our Lives, Tim Hartford says, we are often so seduced by tidiness that we fail to appreciate the virtues of the messy, unquantified, uncoordinated, improvised, imperfect, incoherent, crude, cluttered, random, ambiguous, vague, difficult, diverse, or even dirty. He says the scripted speech fails to reach the energy of the room. Let me repeat that last sentence. The scripted speech fails to read the energy of the room. Are we failing to read the energy of the room? Nature is flowing through me right now. Nature is flowing through you right now flowing through you. The same nature that flows through the trees and the meadows and the ocean and the great whales and the hawk and the eagle and the deer and the elk and the rabbits, the same incredible force is flowing through you and me right now. Are we not creatures of nature? And have we organized and paved our lives so completely that we now forget we're creatures of nature? Our bodies are natural. Our bodies are nature itself. Let's look at the forest or the jungle, because there's no better example of nature. If we look at any natural forest or jungle or meadow, what we'll see is a mess. In the forest, there's fallen branches and brush and dead trees leaning against live trees. And it's a mess, a divine mess, divine mess. It was here as a mess before we came, and it'll be here as a mess after we leave. And because the natural genius of nature uses messes to create, to innovate. to evolve. And we're also divine messes. So let's stop trying to be something else. Albert Einstein, the one great genius, we're talking about geniuses today, the great genius that we all think of as the genius, said, our task must be to free ourselves of the widening circle of compassion. Let me say that again. Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. And I would add, in us, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and beauty in us. So let's unpave our minds and set them free to imagine and to invent and to create. And how are we going to start? Let's wake up our senses. Let's become aware of fragrances. Let's not just listen to music. Let's hear it. Let's be aware of what it is in that music that touches us. Is it the tone? Is it the vibrato? Is it the haunting minor key? Let's stop ignoring paradise, the paradise that we live in, and start seeing faces instead of looking at faces. And seeing in those faces, let's see their stories. Let's practice every day watching trees and clouds as they dance and flow in the wind. Let's teach ourselves to feel them. And the best way to do that is to realize that they love us. That's right, they love us. Those trees that you see, they're loving you. They're living beings. And part of their purpose here is to give off oxygen so that you and I can breathe. But that oxygen doesn't come alone. It comes with love, that we are being loved. We are being loved by nature. And if we'll just take the time to notice that our lives will change and the genius of nature within you will awaken. Practice these things as often as possible. Practice them daily. Develop a self-talk that stops telling you who you are and replace it with one that says, I'm always becoming more. I am always becoming more. Becoming. That's outside of the intellect. That's outside of the plan. That's outside of of those lines when we were kids, told always color inside the lines. No, color outside the lines. It's time to color outside the lines. Let's take that incredible education that we've gotten from schools and the intellect and the genius intellect that we have, and let's let it be okay to set aside now and go be who we are. I have a couple of quotes that I want to finish with today. One by Oprah Winfrey, who I admire so much. Oh my God, if you don't know Oprah Winfrey's life story, you need to know it. She is a genius's genius. And it got there because she was willing to step outside the lines. She said, I believe there's a calling for all of us. I know that every human being has value and purpose. The real work of our lives is to become aware and awakened, to answer the call. And Rumi said, there's a candle in your heart ready to be kindled. There's a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? Rumi said, you feel it, don't you? Thank you, my friend. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for your kindness and your patience. Next week, we have another new talk. I hope you'll be with me. Now, Go with my love. Go out in the world and make a difference from your heart. Let your heart sing aloud today. I love you.